Captain Sarah Chun watched the dropship's cargo bay fill with smoke as another plasma burst struck their hull. Around her, 30 human soldiers gripped their weapons and tried not to look scared. Most of them had joined the Terran Defense Corps 6 months ago. Half would be dead by tomorrow, thought the Galactic Hegemony had made Earth an offer 3 years back. "Give us your soldiers," they said, "and we will give you medicine that cures cancer, technology that feeds billions, ships that travel between stars." All they wanted in return was what they called military assistance. What they really wanted was bodies to throw at their enemies. Sarah had been there when the first human regiments shipped out. The alien commanders treated them like walking ammunition. Point them at the enemy and watch them explode. When they died, order more from Earth. 2 minutes to drop, called the pilot over the comm. Sarah could hear the fear in his voice. Pilots knew the numbers better than anyone. Of the last 50 human dropships sent to this sector, only 12 had made return trips. The young soldier next to Sarah, Private Martinez, kept checking his rifle. Sarah had seen that nervous habit in 1,000 new recruits. "First time on Kethra?" she asked. Martinez nodded. "They told us the Vrak were tough fighters." Sarah almost laughed. Tough didn't begin to cover it. The Vrak were 8-foot-tall insect warriors with natural armor plating and reflexes that made human soldiers look like they were moving underwater. Their weapons could cut through tank armor. Their tactics had been perfected over centuries of warfare. "Listen to me," Sarah said to her squad. "The Hegemony brass will tell you to hold position until relief arrives." They're lying. Relief isn't coming. Our job is to die slow enough that the real troops can get into position. Some of the soldiers looked shocked. Others nodded. The veterans always knew. "But we're not just going to roll over," Sarah continued. "We're going to make every death count. Watch how they move. Learn their patterns. The ones who live through today will be smarter tomorrow." The dropship shuddered as anti-air fire exploded around them. Through the small windows, Sarah could see the surface of Kethra Prime. It looked like hell painted in shades of red and black. Smoke rose from a dozen burning cities. This was where the Hegemony made their stand against the expanding Vrak Empire. 30 seconds! Sarah checked her equipment one last time. Standard Hegemony rifle, basic armor, enough supplies for 3 days. The Vrak would have weapons that could punch through starship hulls and armor that laughed at small arms fire. Fair fight was not in the Hegemony vocabulary. The dropship touched down hard. The rear hatch slammed open, and Sarah's squad poured out into a storm of enemy fire. The landscape was a maze of broken buildings and twisted metal. Perfect cover for an ambush. They made it 50 meters before the Vrak hit them. Sarah had fought the insect warriors before, but it never got easier. They moved like liquid lightning, flowing around cover and striking from impossible angles. Their clicking communication sounded like breaking glass. When they screamed, it was the sound of metal tearing. Private Martinez went down first. A Vrak warrior appeared from behind a collapsed wall and put 3 plasma rounds into his chest before disappearing back into cover. The kid didn't even have time to scream. "Spread out," Sarah shouted, but the order was pointless. You couldn't spread out against an enemy that could be anywhere and everywhere at once. A squad of 30 became 20, then 15, then 10. Each human soldier who fell barely slowed the Vrak advance. Sarah found herself pressed back toward a bombed-out factory. The last 5 members of her unit clustered around her. "Captain," Sergeant Williams gasped, blood running from a gash in his forehead. "Orders say to hold until the 47th Hegemony Regiment arrives." Sarah looked at her watch. They had been on the ground for 8 minutes. According to the mission briefing, they were supposed to hold this position for 6 hours. It was a joke. A cruel, stupid joke. But they held anyway. Because that's what humans did. For 3 hours, Sarah's shrinking squad played a deadly game of hide and seek with rack hunters. They used every trick they could think of. They set traps with their limited explosives. They used the factory's broken machinery as improvised weapons. They died one by one, but they made the wrack work for every meter. When the relief force finally arrived, Sarah was alone, bleeding from half a dozen wounds, surrounded by dead wrack warriors. The hegemony commander, a tall blue-skinned alien with 4 arms, looked at the carnage with mild interest. "Acceptable casualties," he announced, making notes on his datapad. "Order another regiment from Earth. We'll need them for tomorrow's offensive." Sarah wanted to scream. She wanted to grab the alien by his skinny neck and explain that each human soldier had a name, a family, dreams beyond dying on alien soil. Instead, she just nodded and said, "Yes, sir." That night, alone in a medical tent, Sarah thought about the 30 soldiers who had trusted her to lead them. She thought about Martinez, who had been checking his rifle right up until the moment he died. She thought about the wrack warriors, how they moved and fought and died. And she started to plan. 3 months after Kethra, Sarah Chun stood in another dropship, but this time was different. The soldiers around her weren't fresh recruits. They were survivors. Men and women who had looked death in the face and somehow walked away. The hegemony had given her a new unit to command, but Sarah had made her own changes. She'd pulled survivors from a dozen different battles. Veterans who had learned the same hard lessons she had. "Remember what we talked about," Sarah said quietly to her squad leaders. "Watch everything. The Vrak always attack from the left flank first. Always. But they have blind spots." Sergeant Williams, who had somehow lived through Kethra despite the head wound, nodded grimly. "Their armor is strongest in front, weakest at the joints." Private Kim, who had survived the disaster at Proxima Station, added, "They can't see thermal signatures through their own smoke grenades." The other soldiers listened carefully. This wasn't standard hegemony training. This was knowledge bought with human blood. Their target today was a Vrak supply depot on Minerva 7. According to hegemony intelligence, it was lightly defended. Sarah knew better than to trust alien intelligence, but she had her own plans. The drop went smoother this time. Sarah's people moved like they had been fighting together for years instead of weeks. They used hand signals instead of radio chatter. They advanced in patterns that confused Vrak sensors. When the enemy hit them, Sarah's squad was ready. The Vrak came from the left, just like always. But instead of bunching up in defensive positions, Sarah's people scattered into predetermined ambush points. The insects found themselves surrounded by enemies who seemed to know their every move. For the first time in her military career, Sarah watched warriors retreat. "Did you see that?" Williams whispered as they regrouped. "The big one with the red markings. When we hit his squad from behind, he actually looked surprised." Sarah had seen it too. For just a moment, the Vrak commander had hesitated, as if he couldn't believe what was happening. They took the supply depot in 4 hours instead of the predicted 12. More importantly, they did it with only 6 casualties. The hegemony commanders were pleased. They were also confused. "How did you achieve such efficiency?" asked Commander Vexhai, the 4-armed alien who oversaw human operations. "Your species is not known for tactical innovation." Sarah bit back her first response. "We learned from our previous engagements, sir. We adapted." "Adapted?" The alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Explain." "We studied enemy patterns. We developed countermeasures. We improved our performance." Commander Vexhai made notes on his datapad. "Interesting. This explains the recent reports from other sectors." "Other reports?" "Several human units have achieved unexpected results recently. The enemy has begun requesting additional intelligence about your species' capabilities." The alien paused. They seemed concerned about something called Terran unpredictability. Sarah kept her face neutral, but inside she felt a spark of satisfaction. The Vrak were starting to notice. Good. Over the following weeks, Sarah noticed changes in how the enemy fought. They were more cautious around human units. They brought extra troops to engagements they would have considered easy victories before. The change became obvious during the battle for Osiris Station. Sarah's regiment was supposed to provide a distraction while hegemony forces attacked the main Vrak position. Instead, they found themselves facing a full division of elite Vrak warriors. "They're treating us like a real threat," Williams observed as plasma fire lit up the night around their position. Sarah smiled grimly. "Then let's give them something to be afraid of." The battle for Osiris became a running fight through the station's corridors. Sarah's people used every trick they had learned. They turned the station's artificial gravity against the Vrak. They used maintenance shafts to appear behind enemy lines. They set traps that no sane military doctrine would have approved. The Vrak adapted too, but they were adapting to fight humans specifically. Sarah realized they were developing new tactics just for her species. No other hegemony member race rated that kind of attention. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found Sarah's regiment holding the entire northern section of the station. The human casualties were surprisingly light. The Vrak losses were devastating. "Impressive," said the hegemony relief commander, a floating jellyfish-like creature called an Akiri. "The enemy committed forces to this position that they needed elsewhere. Sir, they sent their best units to fight you. Units that should have been defending their main base." The alien's translated voice carried a hint of confusion. It appears they consider human forces a priority threat. That night, Sarah intercepted an enemy communication that made her blood run cold and her heart race at the same time. The message was brief, transmitted in the clicking Vrak battle language that few humans understood. But Sarah had been studying. "Request immediate reinforcement. Facing Terran regiment. Standard protocols insufficient." The war was learning their name. Colonel Sarah Chun stood in the Hegemony Command Center, watching real-time battle reports from across the galaxy. Red markers showed human units engaged with enemy forces. What caught her attention was how many yellow warning indicators surrounded those red dots. "Colonel," called Intelligence Officer Thane, a stick-thin alien with gray skin and too many fingers. "You need to see this." Sarah walked over to Thane's workstation. The screen showed intercepted enemy communications from the past 6 months. All of them mentioned humans. Priority alert. Terran forces detected in Sector 7. Request specialized countermeasures. Warning. Human tactical patterns outside standard parameters. Recommend Level 3 response protocols. Urgent. Terran regiment approaching primary base. Evacuating non-essential personnel. Sarah read through dozens of similar messages. The enemy wasn't just noticing humans anymore. They were afraid of them. "When did this start?" she asked. Thane pulled up a timeline. "About 4 months ago. Right after your victory at Osiris Station. The enemy began developing specific protocols for engaging human forces." "What kind of protocols?" "Everything. They've created specialized training programs. They've redesigned their standard battle formations. They've even developed new weapons specifically to counter human tactics." Thane's large eyes blinked rapidly. "Colonel, they're treating your species like we treat their elite shock troops." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. For 3 years, humans had been cannon fodder. Disposable troops sent to die in place of more valuable alien soldiers. Now the enemy was treating them like the hegemony's most dangerous warriors. The irony was overwhelming. "There's something else," Thane continued. He brought up a different screen. "We've been monitoring enemy casualty reports. Human units are now achieving kill ratios that exceed most hegemony elite formations. The numbers were staggering. Where human units once died by the thousands for minor victories, they were now winning major engagements with minimal losses. Sarah's own regiment had become something the aliens whispered about in their command bunkers. Colonel Chun to command deck. The intercom crackled. Sarah made her way to the bridge where High Commander Zekmar was waiting. The massive alien looked like a cross between a tank and a predatory fish. His species had ruled the hegemony military for centuries. "Colonel, I have new orders for your regiment." "Sir?" "The Sindar Collective has broken through our lines in the Tau sector. 3 full battle fleets are moving toward our main supply base at Kepler Station." Zekmar's voice was grim. "Intelligence suggests they have enough firepower to end this war." Sarah nodded. She had been expecting this moment. The Sindark were the hegemony's oldest and most powerful enemy. If they took Kepler Station, the war was over. "What are our orders?" "All available forces are being redirected to Kepler. Your regiment will provide reconnaissance in force while we position our main battle groups." The alien paused. "Your casualties are expected to be significant." There it was. The same old song. Send in the humans to die while the real soldiers got ready for the actual fight. But something in Zekmar's expression was different this time. He looked worried. "Colonel," the High Commander said quietly, "I've been reviewing your recent performance reports. Your species has achieved results that our tactical computers classified as impossible. We learned from our mistakes, sir." "Yes, you learned." Zekmar's 4 eyes focused on her intently. "The question is, what exactly did you learn?" Sarah thought about the past year. About Martinez and the thousands like him who had died learning hard lessons. About Williams and Kim and all the survivors who carried those lessons forward. About every battle, every defeat, every small victory that had taught humanity something new about war. "We learned that every enemy has weaknesses," she said finally. "We learned that adaptation beats tradition. We learned that being underestimated is sometimes an advantage." "And what else?" Sarah smiled grimly. "We learned that the war itself is a teacher, and we've been very good students." Zekmar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried something Sarah had never heard from a hegemony commander before: respect. "Colonel Chun, I'm giving your regiment full tactical autonomy for the Kepler defense. You will answer directly to me, with complete freedom to engage the enemy as you see fit." Sarah felt her heart skip. "Sir, the enemy fears you, Colonel. They fear you enough to change the way they fight wars. I think it's time we found out why." As Sarah left the command deck, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From Cathura Prime, where 30 soldiers had died to buy 8 minutes, to Osiris Station, where her regiment had held off an entire division, to now, when the enemy spoke the word Terran with the same reverence once, reserved for legendary warriors. The war had learned humanity's name. Now it was time to show the galaxy what that name really meant. The Sindar Collective's war fleet filled the void around Kepler Station like a swarm of metal locusts. Sarah Chun watched from the bridge of her command ship as 300 enemy vessels moved into attack formation. The largest Sindark dreadnought was twice the size of anything in the hegemony fleet. "All human units report ready," announced Major Williams, who now served as Sarah's tactical coordinator. The nervous private from Kethra had become one of the finest military minds in the galaxy. "Enemy strength?" Sarah asked. "Approximately 200,000 Sindark warriors, plus their combat servitors and automated defense systems." Williams paused. "Our intelligence suggests they've brought specialized anti-human equipment." Sarah almost laughed. A year ago, the idea that anyone would develop specialized weapons just to fight humans would have been ridiculous. Now it was simply another factor to consider. What kind of equipment? predictive targeting systems designed to counter our tactical flexibility, enhanced sensory equipment to detect our stealth operations, close-quarters combat units specifically trained to fight human-style irregular warfare. Through the viewports, Sarah could see the rest of the hegemony defense fleet taking positions. Massive alien dreadnoughts, sleek Akiri destroyers, clouds of fighter craft from a dozen member species. It was an impressive sight, but Sarah knew it wouldn't be enough. The Sindark had brought enough firepower to crack planets. "Colonel," came High Commander Zekmar's voice over the comm, "you have tactical command of all human forces. The rest of the fleet will support your operations." Sarah blinked. "Sir, did you say I have command of the entire defense?" "Negative, Colonel. You have command of the human units. The rest of us will support you." For 3 years, humans had supported alien operations. Now the aliens would support them. "All units, this is Colonel Chun." Sarah broadcast to the human fleet. "Today we show the galaxy who we really are." The battle began badly. The Sindark opened with a bombardment that shattered 2 hegemony cruisers before they could return fire. Their fighters swarmed through the defensive formations like angry insects, targeting command ships with surgical precision. Sarah watched the alien commanders struggle with outdated tactics. They fought the war they had always fought, following strategies that were centuries old. The Sindark countered every move before it was made, but the humans fought differently. Sarah's ships scattered across the battlefield in patterns that looked like chaos to both sides. They used the massive alien vessels as cover, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before return fire could find them. When the Sindark tried to predict their movements, the humans simply changed the rules. "Ghost Squadron reports successful penetration of enemy line," Williams announced. "They're inside the Sindark command formation. Phoenix Group has eliminated 3 enemy cruisers using kamikaze runs on their engine cores. Reaper Battalion has somehow convinced the Sindark Dreadnought to fire on its own. Escorts." Sarah nodded as each report came in. These were tactics no military academy taught. They were lessons learned in blood and desperation, refined through countless battles where humans had been expected to die. The tide of battle began to shift. The Sindark had prepared for everything except the kind of warfare humanity practiced. Their predictive systems couldn't track enemies who made decisions based on instinct and improvisation. Their specialized anti-human weapons were useless against foes who refused to fight by any recognizable rules. "Colonel," came an urgent transmission from Major Torres. "Leading the assault on the enemy flagship, we've captured their command deck. You need to hear this." Sarah's screen filled with the image of a Sindark commander, a tall humanoid covered in metallic scales. The alien was speaking rapidly in its own language, but the translation scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "Cannot predict their movements. Standard tactical doctrine is ineffective. Recommend immediate withdrawal before the Terran forces." The transmission cut off as Torres' team secured the bridge. But Sarah had heard enough. The greatest enemy fleet in Sindark history was retreating because they were afraid of human soldiers. "All units, pursue and harass," Sarah ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The human fleet followed the retreating Sindark like wolves chasing elk. They struck at isolated ships, destroyed supply convoys, and turned an organized withdrawal into a panicked rout. When the battle was over, the Sindark had lost 60% of their fleet. The humans had achieved the impossible. They had saved the hegemony. "High Commander," Zekmar's voice filled the communication channel. "All ships, this is Fleet Command. The Sindark invasion force has been repelled. Kepler Station is secure." Sarah heard cheering from human ships across the fleet. 3 years of dying in other people's wars had led to this moment. "Colonel Chun," Zekmar continued, "report to the command station immediately. An hour later, Sarah stood in the hegemony's most secure conference room, surrounded by the military leaders of a dozen alien species. They all looked at her with expressions she had never seen directed at a human before. "Colonel," High Commander Zekmar said formally, "the Hegemony Council has voted. Effective immediately, all human military forces will be granted full membership status in the Galactic Hegemony. You will no longer serve as auxiliary troops." Sarah felt tears she hadn't realized were there. "Sir?" "More than that," continued the Akiri fleet commander. "We are requesting that human officers take command positions throughout the fleet. Your tactical innovations have proven decisive. The enemy fears you," added a Ketharan general, "and they have learned to fear you for good reason." Sarah thought about the long journey that had brought humanity here, about Private Martinez and the 30 soldiers who had died on Kethra Prime, about every human who had fallen learning the lessons that won this war. "We didn't become warriors overnight," she said quietly. "We became warriors because the war taught us how. Every defeat was a lesson. Every death was tuition paid." The alien commanders nodded, understanding finally dawning in their expressions. "The Sindok will return," Zekmar warned. "This war is not over." Sarah smiled. "Then we'll be ready for them. Because the war may have learned our name, but we've learned something more important." "What's that, Colonel?" "We've learned that humanity doesn't just fight wars. We evolve through them. And every time we evolve, we become something our enemies never expected." As Sarah left the command center, she could hear the alien commanders already discussing tactical innovations, new strategies, ways to incorporate human-style warfare into their ancient military doctrines. The galaxy had learned to speak humanity's name with respect. Now humanity would teach them what that name really meant.